Nicole has been living in Auroville since 1980. She served as a socio-economic member of L'Avenir, having been active in trying to give form to Auroville's economic ideals. She co-founded key services such as Nandini and PTDC, worked in the financial service, and has served on both the BCC and FAMC. She has managed the Auroville Visitor Center for over 20 years, helping to define the policy for visitor access to Matrumandir and Auroville. Over to you, Nicole.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I don't realize, no? Okay, so I was approached to try and define a little bit better the relationship between the city, between the planning, and the economy of Auroville. We've all heard the presentation that was made by Olivier, which was centered mostly on the prosperity aspect of the economy. But I felt that how does that impact the city? How does that impact the built form? How does that impact the social system in which Auroville is supposed to function? So maybe we can have... So when I was on L'Avenir TDC, Doshi one day asked us this question, but this city, what will it feel like? And we were actually all a bit floored by the question. And this question stayed with me. And when this dreamweaving exercise revived in the present form, I have been again thinking, what kind of information can we give to try and answer some of that question? So, a city. In current cities, and pretty much all over the world, except for a few pockets now, cities are capitalist cities. Capitalist cities drive on vital enjoyment. They drive on consumption, overconsumption. And that drive is the generator both of wealth, but also of progress. We constantly invent new things. Some of them are perfectly useless, but some of them are extremely useful. So this is the system pretty much all over the world. But here we are in a city that Mother defined, I mean, one of the ways that she defined Auroville, she said, the system will be an adaptation of the communist system. And I think we need to try and define a little bit better what we can understand of what she meant. Next. So, from the beginning of the 20th century, Mother had these visions of cities. There were a few. She had a few of these visions over the years. It started in the 20s, and then it was this idea to have an ideal city near Hyderabad, and then finally Auroville being the last one in that line of visions that she had for a perfect city. Now, these different visions were different in many ways. How were the people going to be housed, what kind of habitat they would have, how it would be organized, which urban to be at the center, how all this was going to be, keeps on changing. Not all of it, but some of it keeps on changing. But one of the things that remains constant is that she sees a city without the exchange of money. Now, what means a city without the exchange of money? What does she mean by that? She means that You don't have a shop you go to and buy your stuff. That's not how it's meant to be. So you have a city in which she has removed that motor of, of exchange. She has removed it. She has said, no, no money. So how are we going to organize this city without the exchange of money? Because by money, she doesn't just mean the cash you pull out of your pocket, which is what she had in those days, but also all the different aspects that we have today, which is, a virtual exchange of money. So one of the things we can turn to is the way, of course, she organized the ashram. She organized the ashram, and she organized the early Auroville. I know that some of you here remember very well, as places where central services, centrally funded services, were actually giving the goods to people. This is her vision of how the city of Auroville is to function. It's to function by you give your work, in exchange you receive what you need to cover your basic needs. So basic needs are taken care of so that everybody is free to organize his life, not according to financial means, but according to his inner capacities. Next. So if it's not money that drives the life of the city, that motivates progress and research, what is it going to be? We've heard Peter touch on to that point a few times. I've heard on the radio, no, I wasn't here. It's consciousness. It is really everybody trying all the time to be at the top of his or her consciousness. This is what drives progress. It's a progress towards more consciousness. Mother invokes unending education in the Charter, future realization. So obviously she sees Auroville as a very vibrant place. When earlier we talked about communism, she doesn't see it as a sort of drab place where people will just get what they need in some sort of services that are going to be a little bit tatty. And no, she sees that life. She sees us, she sees Auroville going towards being relevant in the world, going towards something that is going to be a shining beacon. Next. What economic principle foster Auroville's manifestation? Now here we have a little bit of the tricky point that Mother's vision for Auroville evolved over the years. It is only in 1969 and further in 1970 that she says very clearly, no exchange of money in Auroville. Before that, it's, there's a crown, there's guest houses, there's restaurants, there's shops, everybody's happily milling around this crown road. But in 69, she says, no exchange of money. And she develops that vision in 69 and 70. She says there will be no private property, no private businesses, no exchange of money. The basic needs of Aurovillians are to be provided for by the township. Next. What does this mean for the crown? The crown, as we all know, is envisaged as a concentrated corridor of common infrastructure and common services. This has not always been understood. also inside Auroville. It's okay? Yeah. We have had drives towards trying to commercialize parts of the Crown, commercialize parts of the city. And several TDCs and FMCs have actually resisted. So far, moderately successfully, but rather successfully, to see the commercialization of this Crown and to ensure that a distinct, non-consumerist environment is upheld. So today, in the stretch of ground that we all know, which is Food Link, Solar Kitchen, PTDC, etc., all the way to Arca, we actually have, so far, pretty much upheld this vision. One of the key questions which we all need to think about is how are we going to ensure vibrancy, dynamism, and creativity in these public services and infrastructure environment? How is this going to be really a living space where everybody wants to go and wants to be together and wants to meet? Next. So in the residential zone, we have all these that I've just talked about, including Santé and the Auroville Library. So what can be envisaged in that stretch is more, perhaps smaller scale eateries, perhaps something a little bit more, familier, I don't know how you say in English. Community kitchens, daycare, laundry, hairdressers, etc. All that in a pedestrian and child-friendly environment within very easy reach of the residences. I think that one of the things that one needs to understand is that, and I'm sure you've heard this now many times, this city is a very compact city. When you are at the end, I would say, of the residential zone, on the outer end, you're actually within how many minutes of the Crown Road? 3 minutes, 5 minutes maximum. So anybody can walk that distance. Anybody can actually enjoy, as long as we, one way or the other, create shade, create a pleasant environment that people can actually really give reality to this pedestrian city. Next. Cultural zone, we have Kalabumi, we have the Arts and Music Studio, we have schools. And yeah, this cultural zone, I thought it was very interesting when Anupama presented. When she actually explained very well that both the cultural zone and the industrial zone are inward-looking zones. They are zones to develop. The cultural zone is a zone to develop the culture of Auroville, to grow our own culture. And the industrial zone is the zone where we go to work. It is not a zone where we employ a lot of employees in order to produce things. No. It is the place where we go to work. And why is that important? It's again that aspect of consciousness. We are supposed to work and produce for each other's, because, again, of that aspect of consciousness, we are meant to pour consciousness in what we do, in what we try to manifest. And that creates a value that is transmitted in what we pass on to the next person. So we support each other in this adventure of consciousness by our concentration on that aspect. Next. Then industrial zone, the vocational training, co-working space for Aurovillians. Next. Coming to this international zone, again, coming back to what Anupama was saying, she was saying the international zone is the zone that looks outward. It's the zone that actually lets in all these innovations and ideas from the outside world and brings them in. And we are then able to mingle with that and go further. This international international zone portion of the Crown in the early days, and I think still perhaps in the latest master plan, is a place where you have, apart from institutions like Savitri Bhavan, Unity Pavilion and others, and the Language Lab, you have also guest houses, which makes absolute sense in an international zone. But again, I think we need to ask ourselves the question. People who are coming to Auroville are coming to experience a different type of life. They are not necessarily coming to do what, in a way, they're pushed to do today, which is to consume one way or the other, or to be frustrated by the fact that they cannot access things. So I think that we need, in our thinking, when we envisage guest houses and such places on the Crown Road of the international zone, that we also keep in mind that the people who come, who are going to stay in there, we need to absorb them into the Auroville way of living and not try to cater to their needs in the way that they are catered for outside. Yeah. Then, okay, on the practical level, we have these two parks at each end. We have parks between each of the zones, no? So how to integrate that? I mean, now it's one of the hot topics at present. So how do we blend the existence of these parks with the rest of the city? I very much appreciated what Omar said when he said that from his experience, the green belts have worked when actually they have fingers that go inside the city and that are allowed to create corridors for that environment to flourish. Next. So, if we have this perfect city, when we have this perfect city, we have each and every one of us going about their work in the industrial zone or otherwise, or in the cultural zone. We have the Crown, where we go and get our foods in community kitchens, in PTDCs or whatever. We have that distribution system that takes care of our needs. Mother was very clear. I mean, she faced it also in the ashram. You need a little bit of an extra something for each and every one of us. It's not that some of us may be able to live constantly in a space that is organized on these lines, but many of us will have extra needs. The city will not be able to provide everything that we need. This she also foresees. She foresees that this industrial zone, economic zone, she calls it, is not going to be able to provide everything that we need. So we need a zone of shops. We need a zone of shops for the extras and for the things that we cannot produce. So it's at the same time, the possibility for people in Auroville to go out, to be in a different, access different goods. So, this zone of shops. we all know it. I mean, it's there in the very basic of what Mother explains about the city. So, but we have not defined where that is going to be. It's been envisaged, Mother said it should be at the edge of the city, but where, we don't know. And to my mind, if today we look at the Crown Road and we try to be true to what Mother wanted for this Crown Road, we also need to look at this aspect and to see where that is actually going to land, how it is going to manifest, and what it is going to look like. And it's very important because, yeah, all of us, the moment we want to go to a restaurant, go a little bit to a shop or something, where do we find ourselves? In Quilapallayam or in Pondicherry. Neither of experiences is actually conducive to keeping your level of consciousness, and neither experience is actually being uplifting in any way. So we need to see, okay, what is it that we are going to need, and where are we going to have it? Next. Oh yeah, I forgot yeah. In the same way that this South Service Zone is thought of for the a place for the municipal services like electrical service and all these things. So we have defined more or less that aspect, but the zone of shop has not been developed. It was also there in the presentation that was done by Helmut about Billinger. Billinger also talks about that. At one point, he says, you know, Billinger also, in this study for the mobility, he also talks about the importance of having something somewhere on the edge. So on the edge, on the ring road, what are we talking about here? Because we have to be a little bit, I mean, I don't know, I felt, this is just me, but I felt that it needs to be emphasized that in the galaxy plan that we increasingly refer to, and that I see increasingly a sort of adherence towards, there is no ring road. The city's fingers go into the green belt, and the green belt merges with the city. This is actually what's happening in that plan. Similarly, the Crown, sorry, I'll have to say that, but similarly, the Crown, I mean, you look at the galaxy model, there is no perfect circle on the galaxy model. Because the galaxy is a spiral galaxy. It's not, you have different types of galaxy. This galaxy is what you call a spiral galaxy. Now, a spiral is by definition something that is not in nature, that is not going to create a perfect form. But that's an aside. So, one has to reflect on the desirability or otherwise of this outer ring road, which has advantages for mobility and for access, but is also a divider between the city and the green belt. Mobility and access, what mobility, what access to the city? I think this is perhaps not strictly for this Dreamweaving, which I understand is more for the Crown, but it's super important. It's super important. It actually defines pretty much everything that we are going to do. Next. So, now you've heard in the little presentation that Aditi made, it's 20 years I've been managing the visitor center of Auroville. Means I find myself daily confronted with a reality, an objective outside reality that is growing in terms of mobility, in terms of numbers, in terms of expectation. That is also shifting in many ways and in many interesting ways. But I'm faced with that. And I'm also faced, like we all are, with this extremely rapid, I mean, I don't know, I don't go to Krilapalayam often, but every time I go down nowadays, it's one or two more restaurants or shops or buildings that are popping up. I mean, it's like spreading at a pace that is very frightening. Which is why, sorry, I'll have that smaller side also, which is why I think it's extremely important that the definition of what happens alongside the roads, the tar roads, on land that is owned by Auroville, is really very strictly defined. It is defined, but it is not defined strictly enough. So, I mean, I've been on TDC, I know what it is. You get these pressures, you get these people, it's 20 times they've come, you don't know anymore what to do. You say, okay, let's try and do this. Which generally ends up, I mean, you know very well, generally ends up in disaster, because actually, because we don't have a place for everything. In this, please understand, in this master plan, we don't have a place for everything. And that's why I'm saying that this zone of shops or this zone of, I don't know, studios where the Auroville units can also exhibit their things is important to have. If we don't have that, we will constantly have this pressure of people wanting to go inside Auroville, to go to the magnets of interest that are there in our industrial zones or elsewhere. So we need to create something in a planned environment, in a beautiful environment, that people will be able to feel something of the quality of Auroville when they come here. Yeah, showroom in the industrial zone, raise mobility, accessibility issues, etc. So, next. So, visitor center, we come back to that. So, visitor center is inside the city, not far from the nominal ring road. It actually touches the nominal ring road at the bottom of the visitor center plot. It has limited space, and its chief raison d'être is not to sell Auroville products. Its chief raison d'être is to explain what Auroville is about. Because of the objective reality, financial reality that Auroville has been in over the years, we had to blend this thing. This happened before I got on the scene, I mean on the scene of the visitor center. We had to blend these things. Commercial units support the side that is the side that gives knowledge and services to the visitors. It's getting way too small now. It's getting way too small. The requests from Auroville units to have a place to show what they are doing is constant. It has gone down a little bit with COVID, but I tell you, it's about to start with a vengeance, and so is the number of people coming to Auroville. The moment this COVID is over, I tell you, it's just going to flare up. And it's going to flare up not in the way in which it used to be. 50 people in a bus. No. 2-3 people in big SUVs. That's what's happening today. So we need to, sorry, I'm taking way too long and I'm off topic and whatever, but I think it's important that we think about these things when we talk about mobility and other things. No? I wish that with the present configuration where we have the representatives from both the Tamil Nadu and the Pondicherry government, when we actually have very high-ranking officers on our governing board, that we could take the opportunity to organize buses that come from Pondicherry to come to Auroville. Because otherwise, I tell you, we are not going, I mean, I see Fabian nodding his head, we actually our roads, our access roads, are simply not meant for that. And I'm not saying that we should welcome everybody that comes. But what I'm saying is that whatever we do, we have to plan to do it in a more organized way, in a quieter way for people, in a way that kind of brings them into a different space when they arrive in Auroville. Okay, I'm good. I'm actually, yeah. So, yeah. So currently, all these people that come, roughly 800,000 in non-COVID years. Yeah, they come through the narrow streets of Ida and Chavadi. So that means they're actually going down very small road that was repaired by the collector not that many years ago, which is now again totally destroyed because of water, because of passage. It comes in front of the temple, it comes in front of the school, and it goes through a street, I'm not kidding, it's about 2.5 meters wide, and you can't make it wider because people have built their houses on the Perambouclan. So we are at bottleneck there, and this bottleneck means that on busy days, when we have 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, sometimes 8,000 people coming on big weekends where everybody's on holiday and doesn't have a festival to attend at home, on those days, eh ben, you don't pass. Even on a bicycle, you don't pass anymore. This is the reality. So why? Because everything gets clogged, everything gets blocked. So this is not the way to come into Auroville. We have to find ways to raise the bar, and to raise that bar on our own terms. Yeah. So therefore, there is a pressing need to have a different, better managed access for visitors coming to Auroville, and currently coming to the visitor center. Now, I'm not saying that this visitor center has to stay there for all eternity. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have short-term, medium-term, and long-terms in planning and in life. So now we are in the short-term, and most probably, the way I've seen things in Auroville developing, we're certainly in the medium-term as well. So I know about ideas to, extrapolate and put things in different places. I've been on these places with Luigi and with other people and trying to give a reality to it. Has not happened. So for the moment, we have an objective reality. We have the visitor center where it is, and we need spaces for our units, and not only for our units, also for the research aspects of Auroville, to showcase themselves to the public so that people have a better idea what Auroville stands for, what Auroville is doing, what Auroville is striving for. So, next. So, Fabian will smile again. This is a little bit of my dada, but it's something that I came up with 4 years ago when actually I did realize that the lands that we needed in order to make the stretch of ring road between Auroville Cria and the visitor center parking, we actually had both them. That we actually can pass through. So for me, it's always this thing, then why don't we do that? So I know, maybe we show that thingy, that map. Hein. Tu me donnes le glis-glis? Merci. So, this black thing is the road that comes from Certitude Corner and goes into Ida and Chavadi. This is Ida and Chavadi village. So what the road does, it does this, it goes down here in front of the temple, it comes back up here, and people come into the parking. So what has been happening is that now we have, as you see, not perfect, because we still have pieces of private land, quite a few, 6 pieces of private land, that actually impact the ring road. But we have, just above it, a perfectly free space of green, means Auroville land owned by the Auroville Foundation. That is here. So I just wanted to point that out because I think we need to move on this. I think that blending these two things of creating a space alongside some approximation of Ring Road, which we need on that side, would be a desirable thing to do. And perhaps more what I'm saying is that I felt a little bit alone with that idea. And if it could be taken by some form of dream weaving and by people who have an experience of planning, I think that could be interesting because we need to think about these things. You could very easily have a parking, and this would become a pedestrian boulevard that people would go on. I hear about mobility and how are we going to basically come closer to our ideals of a city with no cars, as much as possible a pedestrian, cycling city. How are we going to do that? How are we going to avoid the mingling of types of transport? It's a question of political will. It's simply a question of political will. The moment we will be sufficient number of people who will want that, or the moment when we will have somebody sufficiently determined who is going to emerge, this is going to happen. Next. So one way to address some of our pressing needs could be, I'm not pushing this idea, I'm here to present something, could be to blend this zone of shops that Mother talks about with the need for Aurovillians to have a space where they can access the goods that they don't get distributed in the city, and blend it with the need for visitors to experience more of what Auroville has to offer. We said that already. So one idea would be, pedestrian boulevard made accessible to visitors via parking and a tramway that showcases Auroville units and projects. This would also help the visitor center to become more of a space simply dedicated for a service sector, information sector, showing more of what is happening on the non-commercial aspect of Auroville. Next. This is just coming back to the points that we have seen: the need for a commercial downtown, the need to own our managed access for visitors. That this one idea could be to blend these two into this stretch of this approximation of the Outer Ring Road. And then, as I said, we're not. I think it was. This morning I was listening to Lata's presentation when she says that, you have a master plan for 20 years, and then you have a development plan for 5 years, and then you have actually an annual plan, and everything that you learn in your annual plan in terms of things that have moved inform your development plan and inform your master plan. So in 40, 50 years, in 20 years, in 15 years, I mean, none of us knows. We may have different needs. We can move this visitor center more outside. But then we can use the infrastructure that will have been created for different use. We can use this infrastructure for more housing, whatever it is that we feel like doing. Voila. Anything else? So this is just the fact that we need a place for everything. When I was saying that we're not, you see, in the master plan, in the galaxy also, we are not really, not everything, and of course, how could it, has been foreseen. So we need to find a place for these different activities. Voilà. Is that the end? Or there's one more? It's the end. Voilà. Good. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Just a comment. I learned a lot more about this whole topics beyond the purely economical side. And you were mentioning the stretch behind Ejjanchavadi, which is in my mind since 20 years and obvious to do. And really, and you were talking about the political will for that, because of course there will be, as everywhere, when you have to change something, there will be problems. But I remember 3 years ago in that workshop, this stretch was one of the play field in that round table exercise, which was very small as it looked like and unimportant. It was a fantastic, I found an exercise to join these different aspects of information, economics, and interface with the villages without making walls and all the rest, and liberate the inner traffic by making the outer ring road somehow functional already on that western side. More not to say at the moment.
Okay. Non, c'est bon. Non, c'est juste un commentaire, donc I took it in that way.
So thank you very much, Nicole. Maybe it's also a comment.
Oui,
we had also 2 weeks ago a little bit touch upon this part.
Ah.
What I miss is the answer or the interaction with the villager, with Kulapalayam and Ejjanchavadi. I think what we saw 2 weeks ago was about the traffic jam in Kulapalayam.
In this exercise, you mean?
Yes, in this exercise.
Yeah.
The regular traffic jam in Kulapalayam.
Yeah.
And it's obviously for me the next. I mean, we need to solve this question. What was the tentative of discussion, exchange, work together with Kulapalayam and Ejjanchavadi? Since 20 years that it was a question. Can you tell us anything or?
No, not really. I mean, you see, you have two different realities. You have the reality. Anybody corrects me if I'm going to say something wrong here. But what I remember from Kulapalayam when we came, those 40 years ago, Kulapalayam is between the road and Putus. I mean, you have these two little temples, and then you have the pond, and then you have the village around it. That's the village. What we call the village of Kulapalayam is what has developed alongside the road, which is actually a lot of external concerns that have come. There's a lot of Kashmiri shops and other shops. So it's a kind of strip development, is that what you call it? A strip development along the road. I'm not saying that it doesn't affect the life of the village, but in a way, I would say that Kulapalayam is much more fortunate in that sense, that they still have their village, they have their temple, they have their streets, they have all that. That's actually not impacted by the madness that's happening on the roads when, again, there is a really big weekend. So, Ejjanchavadi is, the road goes through it. So it is a difficult thing. So what we are at the visitor center at the receiving end of is the fact that people are upset. Villagers are upset about that state of affair. Of course, some people benefit from it, but a lot of people are actually saying, enough is enough. So we need to find a solution. And I find that when we have the solution ourselves, in terms of land, and following roughly what our plan is anyway supposed to be, I'm hoping for people coming together and really looking at the validity. I'm not saying this is valid, this is what we have to do. I would love people to look at the validity of it and help, if it's valid, to help to bring it forward.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Always nice to see, the passion behind people. And every time people present, I think this is it. This is what we have to deal with first. Because they make so much sense. Yeah. I have a comment and a question. The comment is that you remember that with Dream Catchers, we have done a medium, short, medium, and long-term.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
I think Murray was involved in it quite a lot, and David and all of us. So there we brought I think so, but I think you were already working on it, like we brought the parking already out. You remember what that mess was before?
Yes.
Buses till Matra Mandir,
Yes.
and now we've achieved that.
Yes.
The next part was to take visitor center to where the SLI was, where
Yeah.
Kalia has
Yeah.
given his land
Yeah.
now to Auroville. And we had even walked that path, and we had
Yes.
said, why not take that walk?
Yes.
And people walk exactly, it's 10 minutes
Yes.
from there to visitor center. Then visitor center is more educational, research
Yes.
oriented, and then you go 10 minutes to
Yes.
Matra Mandir. So I was wondering if that's still in your consciousness somewhere. And and why wait, 30, 40 years, forget it. We have to do it as soon as we can, because
Yes.
8 lakhs a year, it's not going to get less, as you said. We're not going to manage another even 5 years. We're going to be bursting. So maybe that's...
We'll have to make choices.
Yeah, what
have
we
to
can
make
do.
choices.
I mean, I know it's a big investment, but like you said, if there's political will and and maybe there is money to, and then we can design something which is more, because like Swaram, people want to come to Swaram because they want to see how it's made. Every time people say, I want to see how paper is made in Auroville. You can't send them to Auroville paper, right? They love the paper, but they also want to see how it's made. So how can we kind of bring that, maybe through videos or some way of doing workshops, I don't know. But next visitor center can be different because we have learned everything along the way. So that's the comment. The question is, so you said industrial zone and residential zone are inward looking.
Cultural zone.
Cultural zone and industrial zone are inward looking, and residential is residential, and international is more our face to the world.
Yes, international, yes.
I find one, I have just a question in my mind.
Yeah.
When you look at the model,
Yeah.
the international zone is the most sparse aspect,
Yes,
it's very
yes,
sparse,
yes,
right?
yes.
So if you want that to become the face to the world, and when we see 8 lakhs today, and we're going to just get more, and when we are 50,000, it somehow doesn't sit in the mind, like how that's going to be our face to the world when it is so sparse, and it's, like it's more like a park with some buildings in it, yeah? So we don't want to have all those guest houses there, and all these. So it's still a question in my mind. Whereas industrial zone is so dense. I mean, we have all these 5 or 6 lines of force, 18 stories, And how is that? It's not kind of sitting. Okay, guest houses. I don't know. I mean, we need to also invite people, right? I mean, to experience Auroville life. Yeah? It's not just one-day visitors. We want people who want to stay a little bit, experience 2-3 months maybe, work. So there is some dichotomy there, which I'm not, maybe you can throw some light on that. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, no, the only thing that I can say to that is that, you see, from what I understand, what happens inside Auroville is concentrated. So, as you say, people who will come to the international zone to stay, to research, to share, to take part in seminars or workshops, or so those people are the people that will eventually be very much welcome, I believe, in the international zone. When we talk about day visitors, we talk about something very different. And what I know of the international zone is that they've always said, no, we are not there for that, and rightly so. So I think that the two are different in terms of the type of people that are to be welcome, either as day visitors or as researchers. I don't know if that answers your question.
But yeah, makes sense. No, I'm worried about the density in terms of planning, building.
Yeah, that I'm not really. It's not my area of expertise at all.